Hello there. Welcome to Seaside Quilting Tutorials. Today I'm just going to share with you a quick tip on how to neatly fold your fabric for storage. Some people have been asking me when they see pictures in my sewing room, how exactly do I get my fabric to stack so neatly so it looks like books sitting on a shelf. So that's what I'm going to show you today. The end result ends up being like this. So your fabric is approximately going to be around 6 inches wide by 11.5 inches tall. And that kind of depends. This is your typical width of fabric, 42 to 44 inches. And I'm using a 6-inch ruler in order to fold my fabric. So it just depends on how much fabric I have that's going to go around the ruler on how wide it's going to end up being. Sometimes it will end up being just a little bit wider, especially when I go to fold this fabric, because there's approximately, I think there's around 10 yards of fabric in this bundle. So when I go to wrap it around my ruler, it's probably going to end up being closer to 7.5 or more inches wide. But that's fine for most bookshelves and bureau drawers. The height is always the problem when you're trying to store your fabric on a shelf. So typically when you get your fabric in, I used to iron it right away, and I just can't keep up with the whole pressing it ahead of time. If I get just a couple yards in or something, then sure, I have enough time to sit and press it. But when I have stacks of fabric that I'm trying to fold up like I do today, I'm not going to bother to press it. It's going to end up with some folds in it anyways while it's sitting up on my shelf. When I take it down to use it, I'll iron up the amount that I need out of it. So when you get your fabric, it's folded from selvage, and this is a batik, so it's harder to see the selvage on it like you can on these. But it's the same thing. You can see the selvage on this one because it's a white selvage. On the batiks, you tend to not see the end selvage like you would on your other fabrics. So usually it's folded selvage, and you'll have a fold here when you get it off of the bolt. I just fold it one more time in half. I'm at my long arm table instead of my cutting table so that I can sit and not be on my feet for hours. So I just fold it in half again. And that's what gives me my approximately 11.5 inches high of fabric. Then I just take my ruler that's 6 inches wide. This one is a 13-inch ruler. It's just an old ruler. I don't use it anymore because it doesn't stay in place as well as I would like it to. And I've replaced it out with a Creative Grids ruler. This one slides out of my fabric real easy, and that's what I like for when I'm folding my fabric. Not that you should go out and buy a specific ruler just for folding your fabric. Most of us have the longer rulers that are 6 inches by 24 inches or 24.5 inches. And if I'm over at my my cutting table rather, I'll often quite use that ruler. This one sits over near my sewing machine, so I'm using this one today. So you just basically fold your fabric over that one time. And with my fingers, I'm going to hold it in place a little bit and tuck it underneath as I fold my ruler over. And then I just adjust my fabric, pushing my ruler a little bit this way to tighten it up a little bit while I'm holding it down at the same time, and I'm lining it up so that it's not crooked as I'm going to roll it. And then I just roll my ruler across my fabric, and I readjust my ruler if I need to. The more that you have to roll onto your ruler, sometimes you have to adjust so it's not getting crooked as you're rolling it. Now, if I only have a little flap coming over this end, and it's only going to be a little bit of a width when I fold it over, like say it's going to be a little bit of a width like this, I'll just fold this over and then fold it one time. Now, some people like to stick a pin in here. I don't like to because I've had pins sitting here for years, and then all of a sudden you find, probably not with your newer pins as much as your really old pins, or the kind of pins that you find in your clothing when you purchase clothing when they still have the pins in them. But the older pins used to rust, and then you'd end up with a rust mark on your fabric. So I don't tend to put pins in them. Some people like to stick a pin in here so it doesn't unfold, and they'll put a pin in the top and the bottom. I don't do that, and it saves me from sticking myself when I grab my fabric off the shelf. So once it's folded the way that I want it to be, I just take my ruler and I slide it out of the bottom of the fabric, and my fabric is all folded, and I can just neatly stack it. And usually I'll, depending on how much I have to fold, which right now I probably have, I've folded a good amount, so I'm probably down to about 20-30 yards left to go to be folded today. And once I have it all folded in a nice stack, then I take it over to my bookshelf and I find room for it. If you don't have enough fabric to go all the way across your bookshelf, I just take a couple, sometimes I'll take some of them and leave them sideways so that they hold the other fabric up straight. Sometimes I'll stick a couple books in there up against it to keep it up straight until I have enough fabric to fill that shelf on my bookshelf. Usually I don't have a problem with filling a shelf. Usually I have a problem with finding room for the next fabric to go in. Because, we just don't use it as fast as we can buy it, do we? So this is how it looks when I put my fabric up on my bookshelves. I try to coordinate it by color as best I can. Sometimes it's by a particular theme. For instance, I have fusions up on my top shelf because I have enough fusions. And where my fusions ended, I added in a few other pieces that are blenders, since that's what I use my fusions for. I have a shelf that doesn't have the same height as the other shelves, and I wasn't able to get it adjusted due to my next shelf wouldn't have room. So I just kind of set things up there, faux leather and so forth, to get it out of the way. And then my next shelf down has my belly dot batiks, and I'm filling that shelf up. I'm not sure if I'm getting it into the camera or not, but this is my bally batik shelf with the bally dots rather. I have my bally chops on a different shelf, and then on a lower shelf I have some solids. I don't tend to use a lot of solids anymore like I used to. I have a few leftovers from before. I'm more like blenders. That's just me. So I do try the best I can to somewhat color coordinate. Sometimes I put lines together. Sometimes I put projects together on the shelves. It's just all in depending on what you have for room and where you're able to store your fabric. And recently I took an old bureau drawer, or just an old bureau, and in the drawers I have this one I have all fat quarters folded up in rows with some that's just sitting there ready to be folded to go into the drawer. But I'm able to put 2 rows of fat quarters. And then I have 3 drawers that I use for the folded fabric. So in this drawer, I have folded fabrics as well that go across. Luckily, the drawer is wide enough. It's around 11.5, 12 inches wide, and it's long enough that I can get a lot of fabric in there. And I've been keeping my Christmas fabric lines in 3 different drawers because I have that much Christmas fabric ahead. I guess you can never have too much Christmas fabric either. So that's basically what I do with a lot of my fabric for storing them. And I hope that's been helpful for you today. Happy sewing!